If both parties, Israel and Hamas, have signed off on this deal, the United States presenting it here today, the UN Security Council endorsing it with that vote, what is the holdup?
Well, we're not sure about Hamas just yet. I mean, from what I've heard, it's Israel which has supported the deal. Hamas is trying to hang on to power. This is their only way. They know that they are at the end. Their military capabilities have been really significantly decimated. President Biden himself said that. And that's their number one goal, is to try and figure out a way. And so you see them trying to play these dirty games of, whatever machinations they can make to stay in power. But the thing is that as time is wearing on, pressure even on Hamas and pressure even within Gaza is increasing. Gazans are becoming increasingly vocal about how angry they are that they are finding themselves in harm's way because of Hamas. Sometimes there's a major information war here that sometimes occasionally it feels like Hamas is winning in terms of whether the extent to which people realize how much is Hamas's fault, how much it is that they are in the way of a ceasefire. But the fact is, what you're seeing now is, with every week that passes, you're seeing more the ceasefire plan changing, adapting, giving more to the Palestinian side. Israel saying we're ready to do this. You see the G7 last week came out behind it. Now you have the UN Security Council just passed a resolution today for a ceasefire. And now you also have political movement inside Israel that threatens Netanyahu's grip on power, which also helps push for a ceasefire. So I see all these signs that we're finally close to getting to something, but Hamas is the one that finally has to wake up and see that they have no future anyway.
Well, it's interesting to consider how the events of this weekend may influence that. This is something we spoke to Jonathan Panikoff of the Atlantic Council about earlier today, this rescue operation that did result in the saving of 4 Israeli hostages, but also resulted in the deaths of nearly 300 Palestinians, according to Hamas. And Panikoff says that could add a complication. Take a listen.
I do think it certainly creates a situation where Sinwar now has an excuse again through propaganda of saying how many were killed to say, no, there's no reason for me to negotiate. Look what Israel is doing. And that can complicate things right now.
Hagar, I wonder what you think of that, this idea that we saw a large number of casualties as the result of getting those hostages rescued. Does that actually make a ceasefire farther out of reach than it was before?
Well, so to answer your question backwards, I don't think it makes it harder to obtain, because every single week there's something that arguably could be used as an excuse for the ceasefire to not go through, right? You had only 2 weeks ago was the situation in Rafah, where an airstrike against 2 Hamas militants ended up igniting that fire that killed somewhere around 40 Palestinians. And I would take issue, by the way, with the number of Palestinians who were killed. First of all, it's numbers coming from Hamas. So we don't know the actual numbers. And second of all, we don't know how many were militants. We know that of the 2 convoys that had gone to Septis to rescue the hostages, one of them came under intense fire and were fighting militants for a while. They almost didn't make it out safely. So you're going to have a number of them that are militants. Now, and let's say you take the number in between Israel, what Israel says, which is under 100, and the Palestinians who say there's 274. And then you have a number of militants. However you look at it, all of this is part of an information war on the part of Hamas. They're a terrorist organization at the end of the day. It's not like dealing with any state or government. And so they're going to use anything they can to try and increase their position of power in negotiations. But at the end of the day, they know more than anybody, and the U.S. government put this out there, that their military capabilities and certainly governing capabilities are getting worse by the day. Their prospects are getting worse the longer this war goes on. That's why they're harping so heavily on this information war, to try, the moment the hostages are rescued, is to go out and say, oh, but you know what? Let's do this math of how many lives are equal to 1 Israeli. And you see a lot of social media hyping that up, of course. All of this to say, you're going to have these type of big events every week, and I don't see it undermining ceasefire talks. At the end of the day, it's about how weak Hamas will feel. That's when they genuinely feel weak, is when they'll finally give in to some kind of negotiation, because that'll be their only way of survival. When does Israel open a war against Hezbollah? Oof. Okay. So listen, the timing that you have to look for is this summer. If it's going to happen, it's going to be this summer before September. And the reason I say that is that you have thousands, tens of thousands of Israelis who've been displaced from the north of Israel elsewhere. And there's a lot of pressure on the Netanyahu government right now that for them, because they want to return and they want their kids to go back to school in September. And things are heating up in general. You're seeing a lot of rhetoric inside the Netanyahu administration about finishing Hezbollah off once and for all and saying, we're not going to take this anymore. You can't threaten our people in the north. They have to get back to their lives. That said, if you have all these moving parts, and you do have all these moving parts for a potential ceasefire, more and more countries jumping on board, Israel, the Israeli government adapting and making that ceasefire proposal more favorable to the Hamas side. When you have all those moving parts, a potential normalization deal, if that were to happen, then I wouldn't worry about anything happening with Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is only pursuing strikes to show that it's doing something at all. And that said, that's not the Israeli government's only going to accept it for so long. If you have something winding down in Gaza, it frees the Israeli military up to pursue something against Hezbollah. But again, if it's a ceasefire, then that's likely to dissipate. Though those tensions will calm down. If they don't calm down and you don't have a ceasefire, then I would expect things to ramp up July, August timeframe before September to send a message to Hezbollah that we want our people to go back. You better stop bothering them.
Okay, so it could be potentially something that happens in short order, if at all. Hagar, you mentioned there a few times the pressure within the Netanyahu government, and certainly you saw that government shrinking, at least in some way. The war cabinet got smaller after Benny Gantz this weekend decided he was out. He disagrees too much with Benjamin Netanyahu on the conduct of this war, and also the idea that there needs to be an end plan in place, what that ultimately will look like. He was a more moderate voice in this coalition government, Hagar. There's much more far-right influence potentially left in his wake. How should we think about the consequence of that?
So it's fascinating. So because the war cabinet was created really in order to assemble more centrist, more expert voices to help forge a path forward and a strategy related to this war. Notably, the far-right ministers of Netanyahu's government are not part of the war cabinet. Now, that doesn't mean, like you said, these far-right voices are certainly going to be able to fill up a vacuum in terms of Netanyahu's own administration. But at the end of the day, Netanyahu is caught between a rock and a hard place, between several rocks and several hard places, because on one hand, he's absolutely pursuing decisions with a political goal in mind. Politics for him and staying in office is a question of survival. He has been facing major corruption investigations. If he is out of office, then those corruption investigations are going to catch up with him, and those cases are going to move forward. Whereas while he's in office, he finds ways to shield himself. He has tried to pursue all these judicial overhaul efforts that were the butt of a lot of drama last year, and obviously the reason for a lot of protests last year before the conflict broke out. So you have that rock and hard place, and that Netanyahu wants to stay in office, but at the same time he's facing pressure from the hostage families to accept a ceasefire, to get the hostages released, because even with the amazing news of the 4 hostages released now, we can see very clearly from the numbers that you get the greatest number of hostages released from these deals. Rescuing them is a very difficult, very arduous effort that is extremely risky and dangerous. And they've only rescued, I believe, 7 so far since the beginning, since October 7. And whereas you have around 120 more or less left in Gaza. So he's facing that pressure too, but he knows that the far right won't accept a ceasefire. All that said, these are all things that will crumble. The fact that Benny Gantz has now left, and Benny Gantz with the latest polls shows that he has a majority over Netanyahu. And he's calling for elections, and we know how volatile things are in Israel generally. No, on a normal day, the politics are very volatile. I would expect those elections to take place at some point this year. But Netanyahu, he feels like he's in this crunch, and I just don't know that he can hang on that much longer.